This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to For the Record on BCIT's The Crow. I'm Gabe Liesi, your host. As you have come to expect every Tuesday and Thursday at 1:30 p.m. from BCIT's soon-to-be world-class journalists, a deep dive into three fascinating topics. Festivals are a staple throughout the summer, and my colleague Caleb Templeton spoke with Renata Mills, the executive director of Festival Kelowna. They discussed security for the upcoming festival after the Lapu-Lapu tragedy that occurred in East Vancouver last month. Then, a timely piece following the end of another underwhelming Vancouver Canucks season. My colleague Bobak Roshandeli caught up with Canucks analyst Landon Ferraro for his opinion on the hiring of Adam Foote as head coach and what the team will look like next year and beyond. But first, journalism is a rapidly changing industry that is demanding, deadline-driven, and increasingly multi-platform. Young journalists trying to make their way must be able to script, shoot, and edit content for everything from web stories to Instagram Reels. Bridget Stringer-Holden is an associate producer and web writer at CBC. She completed her Master of Journalism at UBC and worked at a number of student newspapers and radio stations throughout her time in university. Her written work has been featured in the Globe and Mail, the Georgia Straight, and Vancouver Magazine, amongst other publications. She has been at the CBC for just over a year and has helped produce radio shows including What on Earth, Unreserved, Just Asking, and Day 6. She is particularly passionate about environmental stories and including the voices of underrepresented communities. She was kind enough to sit down with me and talk about the pressures of working in journalism, her frustrations with the industry, and advice for aspiring journalists. Please enjoy our conversation.
Okay, Rosie, so my first question for you is, what inspired you to start this program?
Sarah and I are long-term friends. We both love the outdoors. We find for ourselves, and we've also seen this for our children, that nature is just so regulating and restorative. We've been OTs for many years, working in various roles, but over the last few years, started to learn more about these pediatric nature-based practices, some in the U.S., some in Ontario, some in Alberta. And just felt really drawn to it because there was no such thing in BC to date. And then we both volunteer with our children's cross-country ski club, and so we would spend our winters just starting to chat about this idea, and slowly it sort of gained some traction of what it could actually be. And in 2024, we decided to run with it. So, yeah.
Wow, okay. And obviously, your program surrounds the aspect of occupational therapy, but what exactly are you trying to teach the kids that are in your program?
So it's like any other occupational therapy practice. It's very goal-based, and so each children's goal is going to be different. We do an intake interview with the families at the beginning and do some collaborative goal setting with them. And so then our job throughout the session is to weave in skills around those goals into the sessions. There can be overlap amongst the children.
Bridget, journalism is shrinking, newsrooms are closing. We've spoken about this before. People are tuning into traditional news outlets less and less. And it was a conversation that I was having with Mike Killeen, one of the professors here, and he said he gets asked it often enough that I just felt like I should ask it, because some people would question your decision of getting into the industry of journalism in today's day and age. Can you talk to me about why you made that decision?
Yeah, I think the industry is changing right now because, when I first started, I was writing for actual physical newspapers that were delivered to people's houses or that they picked up on campus because I was in undergrad. But now I think it's shifting. So, at CBC, there's web, there's radio, there's video. Like, we don't even think about print anymore, really. Like, all of that I do has shifted to sort of web writing, even though it's the same thing, but it's just on a computer screen. When I first went into journalism, I went to Capilano University for communications. I was figuring out what I wanted to do, and that was the program that let me take the most electives. But I took an article writing course. And I realized, hey, I really love this. It ended up getting published in the student paper. And I thought, hey, I can get $30 for this. This is really fun. So I started contributing to the student paper more. I did a bunch of internships. Like, I have seen the industry change over time, but it's still something that I'm really passionate about and really interested in, and I can still make a living from.
And so let's talk about that industry change there, since you brought it up. How have you found, because you haven't been in industry that long, how long have you been at the CBC?
Yeah, I've been at the CBC for 1 year, like as of last week.
Yeah. So congratulations on your first anniversary
Thank
there.
you.
How have you found the industry change in the time that you've been there?
Honestly, I haven't seen that much change, but I think because I'm so new to it. Like, all of my internships were for magazines or things that like are print and that I have on my wall or that I have at home on my shelf. And CBC has been like such a new world of just radio, video, podcasts. Like, I'm working for a show right now called What on Earth, and I'm an associate producer there, and it's podcast first. Like, I didn't know how to podcast when I came to CBC. Like, they taught me how to use like sort of radio and, you know, audio editing software. So I don't really see it as, oh, we're switching to podcast, it's a whole new thing. Like, I'm coming in as it sort of is getting bigger. So I think maybe for other people in the industry, it might have been more of a shift. But to me, it's like, oh, there's this new thing. I want to learn how to do it.
And have you been able to do that, like sort of explore your interests, or is that something that you're hoping is going to come later as you work your way up through the industry?
Obviously, because I'm starting, I can't be super picky, but I've been very, very vocal of like, I love climate and environment related stuff, and I want to be there. So that's how I got to that podcast, actually. It's like a climate solutions podcast and radio show. So I've just been pushing. I've been doing other stuff as well, but I think like I'm at the point in my career where I'm like, I want to try everything.
And then hopefully you'll be able to do that. Let's talk a little bit more about the industry, because again, we've spoken a little bit about it off the record. You're enjoying the work that you're doing, certainly, but you also do have frustrations with the journalism industry. Can you, and again, amongst other things, it being so deadline driven, you've sort of experienced that in your sort of day-to-day work, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a perfectionist. So if I had like 3 months to write one web article, I'd be happy. And I'd be like, I'm going to call every single person. I'm going to figure out every single angle. And I think there's a balance. Like CBC, like I've had articles where I've said, this is not done. This can't go out today. And they've said that's okay. So I think they've been okay with that. Yeah, I think it's about finding a workplace where like, obviously there's times where I'm like, oh, I wish I had that other voice, but they're not answering. We've tried emailing, we've tried calling, and they're like, okay, you know what? If they get back to us, we'll include them later. So I feel like it's still deadline driven in the sense of like, I wish I could include more sometimes. And I've had people reach out after publishing, like I published articles and say, you know, hey, you should include this voice. So like they do let me do it later sometimes. So I think it's like about a mix. Like it's frustrating sometimes when it's like, okay, I'm only here for this one shift because I move around shows a lot. It's like, today I'm going to be on local news for one day. Like it's sort of do what I can during that day. And then like I have to hand it over or just say, okay, it's good enough.
And then just move on to the next thing. Yeah. We've also spoken as well about just sort of general observations about the news industry and 24-hour news channels. Both of us are not a fan of that. And it kind of ties into the industry being so deadline driven that there always seems to be something to talk about. Can you expand on that for me? Because I know that you and I feel sort of the same way about it. Yeah,
I feel like it should be sort of like in audio, for example. They're like, okay, edit it down till it holds. It's not like, you know, oh, we need to get this into 1 minute. I mean, sometimes it is, but like at least on the show where I am right now, it's like, okay, is it 12 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Like see what the best is. And I think like 24 hours, sometimes there's the pressure, right? Of like, oh, we need to fill this spot at like 3 a.m. Who's going to watch it? Like, I think there is a benefit to like, okay, if someone wants to have access to the news, they wake up in the middle of the night, they should be able to have access to that. Like, I think access to information and facts is really important.
It's always good.
But I think there's maybe ways to, I don't know, like web, right? I publish a web article. You can read it at 3 a.m. if you want. You can read it when it comes out. Like, there's just like always that access. Like, I think that's the important part to me, that everyone have access to information.
Right. So let's get into again, sort of more broader discussion. You have a Master's of Journalism from UBC. I'm currently in the Broadcast and Online Journalism program at BCIT. We both know people who were and still are aspiring journalists. If you look sort of more forwards into the future, what would you say is required for young journalists like yourself, like myself, like members of the program that I'm in? What is required for them to succeed in journalism today?
This is going to sound so cheesy, but
Say it.
networking. Like, that's how I've gotten to where I am today. Like, I am very, very shy. I don't like cold calling or emailing people, but I sort of had to get over it. It took a while. But I think the connections that you make is the biggest thing, because I don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know how to do this skill. Like, if I know someone who can teach me, it'll make a huge difference. Like, all the jobs I've gotten have been through connections, not in the sense of like, hey, you know me, give me a job, but in the sense of like, the work that I'm doing now, I found out about it because people emailed me and said, hey, there's this expression of interest. They're looking to do some backfill. That's, if someone goes on vacation, you can fill in for them. And I didn't know about that. So like the fact that I've reached out to all sorts of different people and said, hey, I want to stay at CBC. Hey, I love climate and environment stuff. If you hear anything, let me know. I think that has made a huge difference.
And just finally to wrap up here, if you had to just give a piece of advice, again, so the networking is good. But if you had to just give a piece of advice for people that are once people actually get into the industry, once they land a job, what would your sort of nugget of information be for them?
I would say just find the stories that you're interested in and go after them. Like, obviously you'll have to do some other stuff, but like, I always in the back of my mind, like, what do I want to write about? And figuring out ways to pitch that, or like, even I suggest stuff as links to the newsletter. Like, okay, can I write up a very small blurb? Like, I'm doing other things, I'm doing web, but can I write up this little blurb? And it kind of goes back to the networking thing, but that's how they're like, oh, Bridget's really good. Maybe we can have her work on this story. Like, they are more willing to accept my pitches.
How often do you find they accept sort of the ideas that you propose?
I would say like my smaller things of like, hey, can I just write like one paragraph? Like almost all of the time. I think it's sort of like building up to that bigger pitch.
Yeah.
Because they're not always accepted. But like if they've worked with you a lot, they're like, okay, we know Bridget can write this. Then they'll be a little bit more willing, I think, to workshop of like, okay, that's not exactly what we're looking for, but let's see what we can figure out. I'll make time for a chat. Like I think that, yeah. Because
they're looking for sort of more bite-sized pieces and less sort of long form, because that's sort of what, like, again, we've spoken about it, that you're sort of interested in the longer form pieces, especially when it comes to climate and environment.
But this is my way in.
But this is your way in.
Yeah. Like I've been on the radio for 1 minute and that was my way in. Like last week I recorded a talk tape and it was like 25 minutes of me and the host chatting about climate, like community buildings and how to make them climate friendly. Like I did that 1 minute before to be like, okay, look, I can do this. I've done it before. Can you let me take that leap? If I showed up off the street and was like, hey, let me talk to your host for 25 minutes, like I think that would have been a hard no.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that 25 minutes, only 1 minute of it was taken, right?
Sorry, no, I did a 1 minute thing for radio before and use that to argue of like, I've done this before, like take a chance on me. Yeah. And it's going to be on the radio in a couple of weeks. Like there will be 25 minutes of me and the host chatting.
That's incredible. Yeah. I'm so happy for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's all the time we have, Bridget. I sincerely thank you for your candor and your time. I only wish that we had more of it. I do hope that sometime in the future we'll be able to put together a longer form conversation. Anything else that you have for me?
I don't think so. I just wanted to reiterate, like, journalism is so important to me. Like, I know the industry is changing and people are telling me like, oh, it's dying. Why are you doing this? And like, I always have to answer, like, I'm doing it because I love it. It's not necessarily for the money. Obviously, I need to pay my bills, but like journalism is just so important to me, and accountability and explainers and just like a place for information and people can find what they need.
On that note, Bridget Stringer-Holden, associate producer for CBC. Again, thank you so much for your time. For BCIT's The Crow, thank you for listening. I'm Gabe Liesi.
And welcome back to For the Record on BCIT's The Crow. I'm Caleb Templeton. The Lapu-Lapu Festival was a gathering celebrating the Filipino people and their culture. Despite the fact that the gathering was a celebration, the festival ended on an unforeseen tragedy. On April 26th, in East Vancouver, a man in a vehicle ran over several people at the festival. The incident resulted in 11 deaths and over 20 people being fatally injured. The festival's tragedy will forever change the way security is handled for big events around the province. I had the honor to speak with Executive Director of Festivals Kelowna, Renata Mills, who organizes festivals in the Kelowna area. We discussed how the tragedy will change future security plans around festivals. Hi, Renata. It's Caleb here.
Hi, it's Caleb.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
That's great to hear. So I first off want to thank you for taking time with this interview, and I'll just get started with my first question.
Perfect.
So in light of the recent events at the Lapu Lapu Festival, how does Festivals Kelowna plan on having better security while these events take place?
So, better security is an interesting phrase. I think what we're talking about is more revisiting existing safety plans to make sure that they're sufficient in case the worst should happen, such as the one we saw recently in Vancouver. The advantage that Festivals Kelowna events hold is that the events are held primarily in parks and non-roadway spaces. So we're really focusing on those elements of an event, such as our Canada Day celebration, where there is, for example, a little bit of roadway access. And what that looks like is having conversations with local emergency services providers, such as the RCMP or Bylaw, the City of Kelowna's Outdoor Event Committee, who oversee public events or events in public spaces. So having conversations with essentially experts in that field to make sure that we've thought about, well, what if the worst happens? What's your game plan then? But also, I think there's now conversation around investing in a little bit of additional infrastructure that would be available to event producers like myself that we could temporarily install on roadways, just to triple check to make sure that, again, if somebody had ill intentions, they wouldn't be able to act upon them easily.
Right. And in terms of your plans, do you expect more people? Do you expect like a difference in people to show up over the summer? Do you expect less people at the festivals because of them being potentially scared of an event like this happening again?
I don't. I'm a bit of an optimist or a pragmatist most times, but historically speaking, we've had many incidents happen around the world and even our own country where you would think that would be the case. But Canadians, I find, are a brave lot, and I think they'd still put a lot of faith in our community leadership and event organizers that we are planning ahead for their safety. Canada Day is the next big event on my plate. Again, majority of the events are held in a park space, so it makes it really challenging for a vehicle to get access to. So that provides that level of comfort, I'm sure. But where there is roadway involvement, interviews like this, others I've held, communicating to the public that we're thinking about it, we're planning ahead, that I can't speak for emergency services, but I'm going to predict or I'm going to guess that they'll be very aware and perhaps on high alert. So I think, if anything can come out of this horrible situation, the silver lining is that there will be an elevated sense of safety, I think, at events, which is a good thing, and that will make people more comfortable coming out and continuing to celebrate with events.
And speaking of safety, in your opinion, what do you think was different in a potential plan that festival organizers will have for future festivals that wasn't implemented in the plan for the Lapu Lapu tragedy?
Well, to be honest, I don't really know what the Lapu Lapu festival planning looked like based on pictures that I've seen, where they may have been more informal with those, temporary barricades you can place up that are basically plastic now because they're lighter and they're easier to move around, which is a benefit to an event producer, but maybe didn't prevent as or provide as much limit to a space. I think going forward, I know in Kelowna there's actually conversations around, for example, we just opened up our launched for the season our Meet Me on Bernard program, where we have a major roadway in downtown Kelowna that is now shut down to vehicles, and it's a pedestrian thoroughfare. So where last year they had flour barrels and they may have had those bollards that you can drive over that are, that'll fall over to make access to the roadway easier, I think going forward there's now going to be, at least for the next few years, more infrastructure that is sturdier, that is harder to get past, which for us, the trickle down is, how do we temporarily load in and load out an event space on a roadway? So I think materials being used is different, and I think even physical layout of event spaces is going to be different.
And you touched on earlier about how there's a lot of people who will be brave about attending events. What about the person who wants to celebrate Canada Day in Kelowna specifically? What can you to the person who's potentially scared of an event like the Lapu Lapu tragedy happening again, what could you assure to a person like that?
Well, again, people can make their own decisions. The sheer number of people that tend to come out on Canada Day, and we've had, knock wood, minimal negative activities or behaviors or incidents, is, I think, a testament to the way our community can safely gather. They rise to the occasion. I mean, the most recent example I can give you, which I've spoken about previously, is when the Vancouver Canucks a number of years ago were eliminated and there were the riots downtown. People didn't like the response. They went absolutely banana crackers. They lit things on fire. Like, what an embarrassment. And I think, I know right away the trickle down in my community was that conversations were held around large gatherings of people. And then what? What happens when you cut them loose at the end of the event and they're just wandering? And we actually had an incident-free event that year because, again, people rose to the occasion. So in terms of making someone who might be nervous about coming to a large community gathering, with Kelowna specifically, the location of the event celebrations, again, it's not on a roadway, it's in a park space.
Right.
And it's really, really challenging to get into that space with a vehicle. Like, one of the spaces we use is called Waterfront Park, and we have 0 vehicles moving through that space.
Right.
Like in the park space on the day of the event. So we've always been doing that, knowing that it's a very pedestrian active zone. But I think people can feel safe and comfortable that others are watching out to make sure that it is a safe gathering for our community to celebrate Canada on July 1st.
And in terms of like security guards and potentially metal detectors, will there be any additions of that at any festivals in Kelowna this summer?
Well, I can't speak to other events. There will not be with ours. And again, I will use Canada Day as the biggest event that we do on a single day. It's an ungated festival, which means it literally is ungated. There's no fencing to contain or to control access and exit.
Right.
So there is no need for that. The other thing is, I think as a culture, where we see in other countries, particularly south of the border, where there is a, finger quotes, gun culture,
right,
it's not that way in Canada. So we don't have the same kinds of concerns. I do know, again, from history and from experience, that emergency services come out in force on Canada Day. And, what you want to find is that balance between creating that feeling of safety and that you do have police on patrol and you have bylaw making sure roadways are clear and all of those important things, but you also don't want it to look like a military state.
Right.
It's supposed to be a fun, celebratory day. Last thing you want to do is wander an event site and you've got people, geared up in flak jackets looking like they're waiting for something terrible.
Right.
So it's important to find that blend and that balance. And I think that's what, emergency services do well. They for Pride, they modify their uniform a little bit to look like they're part of the celebrations. And
Right.
Canada did the same. They're on foot patrol to be amongst the crowds, which also gives them the added benefit of being a little closer to the action if they need to be. So, yeah, I feel very comfortable that our police, our bylaw, our fire and ambulance continue to do a great job, and they know way better than I what to look for and how to prepare for it.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, Renata. Thank you for this interview.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye. That was For the Record. I'm Caleb Templeton for BCIT's The Crow.
And welcome back to For the Record on BCIT's The Crow. I'm Babak Roshandelli. This past NHL season was a difficult one for the Vancouver Canucks, to say the least. From drama between players to lackluster performances on home ice, the team has been through a lot. Entering this offseason, they are dealing with more questions than answers and face uncertainty regarding the futures of certain players. The recent hiring of Adam Foote as the new bench boss can give the team one less thing to worry about as they look to solidify what they have in preparation for next season. I spoke to former NHLer and current Sportsnet analyst Landon Ferraro about the direction the team will look to take next season and what Canucks fans can do to best support their team moving forward. We began our conversation with Landon's immediate reaction to the hiring of Adam Foote.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that Adam Foote was definitely in contention for it. He's put in the work. He's put in the time to earn his shot as a head coach. But especially I think it's more about the year that the Canucks just had, the amount of inconsistency, the amount of guys that were injured out of the lineup, the stuff that happened off the ice. JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, and there was a lot of noise around the team this year. And now all of a sudden, your coach of the year winner last year, and Rick Tocchet, or 2 seasons ago, decides to leave the team. Like, there is so much going on that hearing that Foote got the job, it makes a lot of sense to me. If you can try and just keep a little bit of familiarity in there, try and settle the group down a little bit, and they already know what he's about, how he likes to run things, how he goes about his business, what he's going to expect from the guys. That makes it a lot easier for them going into their summer and their training it's not a complete brand new feeling coming in. They have an expectation. They know what that is, and I think that'll give the guys, a bit of calm after a really rough year, and that'll be able to let them focus up and put their training in and get back to camp and be excited and ready to go.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, so you touched on kind of they're going with someone who they're familiar with, not to kind of upset everything and do a brand new overhaul. And never mind kind of the style of play that Foote wants to implement. Let's talk more about kind of the direction they would want to go with Adam Foote as the coach. So not so much tactics and style of play, what they're going to look like, but maybe the between the ears kind of thing. Maybe it's a mental shift. Do you anticipate that being the case with this hiring?
Yeah, I do, and I think that was a big reason why Rick Tocchet did such a good job. And through this year, obviously there was a lot of noise, and at different points, media and fans alike were not happy with how things were going, and were voicing their displeasure with Rick Tocchet. But I think that he did an amazing job with what he had to deal with. And now you look to Adam Foote, and he's another blue collar type player. Like, he didn't get that far in his career by making beautiful plays and taking the easy way out. Like, he chose the direct route every single time. It didn't matter if there was someone in his way, he was going to go through that person to get him, to get the puck. And that, I think, is what's more important for this team right now. I don't think that they need somebody to come in and change everything and make the system a completely new thing where they can thrive under. It's more about getting the guys back to real simple, hardworking, direct hockey, because when the Vancouver Canucks play that type of style, I mean, we saw it this year on the nights where they were good. that's the type of game they play. That's the type of players that they have. And if he can get that back rolling, and hopefully everyone has a good summer, guys come back healthy and are able to kind of put everything behind, like, he's a type of guy that I feel that he can really kind of steady that ship and give them the direction and just point them. It doesn't need to be, you have to come in and be a coach of the year to save the franchise. It's more about just giving stability, giving the guys that notice of, when something goes wrong, I'm here, I'm ready for it, and I'm in the trenches with you. And I know how much of a cliche that is, but at the same time, when you're a player sitting in that room, you're not looking for the coach to be the smartest guy or to save and come up with all these, amazing new tactics or anything like that. You just want to know that, I'm putting my work in. I come to the rink every day. I go into the gym. I make sure I do my prep. I see the medical staff if I need to. I get on the ice. I work as hard as I can. Then I do stuff after. You want to make sure that your coach is putting in that same amount of effort and is all in with you. And there's no debate if Foote is that, right? Like he was that type of player. He's that type of coach. He cares deeply, and he's not someone that's going to just kind of let things slide by. Like, he will be, like, he's a guy that has a pulse in the room. And I think that's the biggest thing for Adam Foote coming in is he's been in every situation. He's won Stanley Cup. He's done, he's had a long career. Like, any situation, whether you're a star on that team, from Elias Pettersson that obviously needs to have a massive bounce back year, to whatever young guys are going to make up the fourth line. Like, he's been in all those positions and knows what different types of pressure, different types of ways to make yourself stand above the guy next to you, because as much as there's teammates and everything like that, you're always in competition. And he's been in all of those situations. So especially for the young guys, like, anytime they need to lean on someone, he's been there. You can go talk to him. I was lucky enough to be around the team a decent amount this year and being around morning skates. And anytime that you got to have a little conversation with Foote, it was exactly that. Like, you could just see the excitement and the passion in him. And that's something, doesn't matter what industry you're in, whoever's your boss, if they're in it with you and you can feel that they care, it makes your job so much easier to give that little bit more.
Right. I love that answer. I mean, I'm motivated right now to play, and I'm not even part of the team. I haven't even spoken to Adam Foote, so you did a good job there. Another player who needs no motivation to perform and excel is Captain Quinn Hughes. And obviously we've heard in the past that he's very in favor of Adam Foote, and he's worked well with him. Do you see this role maybe changing as Foote takes the head coach position now? And what do you think maybe how this can impact Quinn Hughes this season, and as Canucks fans are hopefully for many more seasons to come?
Well, again, I just think it's not a situation where, okay, you bring someone in from the outside, and obviously, whoever, Bill Smith is the new head coach. His first call is going to be to Quinn Hughes, because he's your captain, and not only is he your captain, but he's one of the best players in the world. Yeah. So now you're having to build a rapport with him and start to get to know how each other work, how each other tick, and all of that. Well, he's been working with Foote for a while now, so they already have that bond. They already have that relationship. There's no wasted time. And as I just said that, I think that is the biggest thing for the Vancouver Canucks this summer is there's no wasted time. And, I've gone through, in my 12 years of playing, like, I had a lot of different head coaches. And some you click with right away, and some others, it takes a couple months to figure out exactly what they want from you or from the team. That's, after the year the Canucks just had, like, that is time that they don't have. And with this hire, I think that's exactly where they need to be. So with Quinn Hughes now, there's no discussion of what do you need from me. And there's no discussion from Foote's side of, how can I help you? Like, they were already completely working together. Of course, Taka was the head coach, but Foote was running everything on the back end. And they already know exactly how that works. And not only that, I guarantee they've had conversations of, I'd kind of like to see things run this way, but Tocchet's the head coach, and we're going to do it this way. Well, maybe there's some minor shifts in how they play, how they deploy their players, how they deploy their systems to make things run a little smooth. It doesn't matter if you're the best coach in the world. Like, you could put Scotty Bowman in his prime, and then he ends up moving on, and you bring a new coach in. That coach might not be at that level yet, but he's going to see the game a different way. He's going to talk about it a different way. Well, maybe that resonates with your captain and the rest of the players a little bit easier, or it might be the same exact messaging, but again, it just comes from a different tone, a different way. Well, maybe that gets this group excited and back moving, and they can get off to a quick start in training camp, right? Like, you don't want to have a bunch of turnover, but at the same time, that always gives you a chance to kind of hit the reset, and it gives everyone a fresh start.
For sure. Okay, great. And just wrapping up now, one final question here. Not what is your message, but what can you say to Canucks fans who have been through it all over the last few years, and this announcement has maybe divided some fan opinions. Some are for it, some are on the fence, some are totally against it. What's kind of your message, an overall quick message on Canucks fans and kind of how they can expect or how they can prepare themselves for this season and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that is a real tough one. I moved to Vancouver after my dad was done playing in 2002. And then I left pretty quickly after to go start my junior career in Red Deer. And so I haven't been in the Vancouver Canuck fandom that, there's a great, they've dealt with a lot of tough times, and they've had some good ones in there as well. But I think, this is a point where, the past is obviously there, and this year is still fresh and has some wounds. But you got to give a bit of grace. You got to give a bit of time. Let him do, when I say him, let Adam Foote do his thing. Let him get his hands on the team and see where it goes. There's a lot of young players that they've, had in the lineup this year through because of injury and all of that, which, you obviously want the guys you sign to play, but, their decor, they end up having 3 rookies on the back end rifling through, with a couple more playing unbelievable in Abbotsford. There's a lot of change, but at the same time, there's some hope here too. And if the Canucks management's able to find some help up front, this group can turn around quite quickly. I think that would be the biggest thing.
Amazing. Yeah, trust the process. Let them do what they're doing.
Exactly.
Enjoy it. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, well, Landon, on that note, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I really actually learned quite a bit just listening to you, and hopefully we get the chance to speak to you once more.
All right, sounds good.
Fantastic. And for all our listeners, you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Babak Roshandelli, for BCIT's The Crow. And that's a wrap for our show today. I'd like to thank our guests, Bridget Stringer-Holden, Renata Mills, and Landon Ferraro for joining us. On behalf of my colleagues Gabe Liesi and Caleb Templeton, I'm Babak Roshandelli, and you've been listening to For the Record on BCIT's The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikka-King.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretanero.
And I'm Radhika